Good evening, friend, wherever you are tonight. Whatever the day has carried into this room with you, you can set it down now. Just for these next few hours, there is nowhere else you need to be, and nothing else you need to carry. You are allowed to rest. Let's begin the way we always begin. Together, slowly, breathe in with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold it gently. 2, 3, and let it go. Slow. 5, 6, 7, 8. Good. Once more. In. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3. Out. Slow. 5, 6, 7, 8. Let your shoulders soften into whatever is holding you. The mattress, the couch, the chair. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands open. Palms up or palms down. Whichever feels like release. Before the story begins, let's pray. Lord, thank you for this night. Thank you that even now, while the world outside these walls keeps moving, you are not in a hurry, and you have not forgot the one listening to these words. We bring you every worry we carried into today, every fear that followed us into tonight, and we ask you to hold what we cannot hold ourselves. Quiet the mind that will not stop running. Slow the heart that is beating too fast. Remind us, in whatever way you know we need reminding, that you are near, that you are steady, and that we are not alone tonight. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Tonight, I want to walk with you along a road. It's an old road, the kind that exists a little outside of time, worn smooth by everyone who has ever walked home tired. And tonight, someone is walking it. We don't know their name. Maybe that's on purpose. Maybe it's so that, somewhere in the quiet, it could be you. They carry a small lamp, not a bright one, just enough light to see the next few steps. No more. And the night ahead is long. 6 watches of darkness between where they are and where they're going. But they are not walking it alone. At each watch, the road brings them somewhere old and sacred. Somewhere someone else once stood afraid and found out they were not abandoned. So let your eyes close now, if they haven't already, and let's take the first steps together. Movement 1, the watchman's post. The village of Kedar's Rest sat where the hills folded gently into one another. A cluster of low stone houses with flat roofs, a single well at the center, and a wall. Not a tall wall, not a grand one, just high enough and old enough to make the people inside feel that someone had thought of their safety before they were even born. Simeon had walked this wall for 40 years. He knew every stone in it, the way other men know the faces of their children. He knew which stone wobbled slightly if you stepped on its left edge. He knew which corner caught the wind first when a storm was coming from the west, and which corner stayed warm longest after the sun went down. Holding the day's heat in its face like a memory it wasn't ready to let go of. He knew the exact rhythm of his own footsteps on the packed dirt path atop the wall. A rhythm so old and so steady that the village dogs no longer lifted their heads when he passed. They simply thumped their tails once against the ground, the way you'd greet a familiar sound rather than a stranger, and went back to sleep. Tonight the sky was clear, scattered thick with stars, the kind of night where the darkness didn't feel frightening so much as full, as though the whole sky had leaned in close to listen. Simeon walked slowly, his staff tapping softly beside him, his cloak wrapped against the cool air that always settled over the hills once the sun was gone. He had long ago stopped thinking of his work as guarding against danger. That was how the younger watchman thought of it. Eyes scanning for wolves, for raiders, for anything that might slip through the dark and do harm. Simeon still watched for those things, of course, but somewhere in his 40th year of walking this wall, his understanding of the work had softened into something else. He had come to think of himself less as a soldier standing between the village and danger, and more as a kind of companion to the night itself. Someone whose simple presence meant that no one in Kedar's Rest had to lie awake wondering if anyone was watching over them. Someone was. It was him. And because it was him, they could sleep. He liked to think that this was, in its own small way, very close to how God kept watch over all things. Not pacing anxiously, not straining with worry, but present, attentive, unhurried. Simeon had read the old songs of his people many times, the ones the Shepherd King had written generations before, the ones that said the one who watches over Israel does not slumber, does not sleep. He had always found comfort in the fact that the verse didn't say God fought off every danger with visible drama. It simply said God stayed awake. That was the whole comfort of it. Someone stayed awake, so you didn't have to. He reached the northern corner of the wall, where the path widened into a small platform used for watching the road that wound down from the hills into the valley below. This was where travelers, if there were any this late, would first come into view. Small dark shapes moving slowly along the pale ribbon of road, lit faintly by starlight. Tonight there was such a shape. Simeon narrowed his eyes, watching the figure for a long moment before he was certain it was a person and not a stray animal or a trick of shadow. The figure moved slowly, unevenly, stopping every so often as though uncertain of the path, or too tired to trust their own feet. He didn't call out right away. 40 years of watching had taught him patience, the wisdom of letting a thing reveal itself before responding to it. He simply watched, staff in hand, until the figure drew close enough that he could make out the shape of a young man. Cloak dusty, shoulders bent forward in the particular way of someone who had been walking far longer than his body wanted to. "Ho, traveler," Simeon called softly, his voice pitched low so as not to startle him in the dark. "The gate's just ahead. You've nearly made it." The young man startled all the same, stumbling half a step before finding his footing again and lifting his face toward the wall. "I didn't think anyone would still be awake," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Someone's always awake here," Simeon said, and something in the plainness of the statement seemed to loosen the tightness in the young man's shoulders. "Just slightly. Come on up to the gate. I'll walk you in." By the time Simeon made his way down from the wall to meet him at the gate, the young man had sunk onto the low stone bench just outside it, elbows on his knees, head hanging low with the particular heaviness of someone who has been carrying worry as much as distance. "You've come a long way," Simeon said. "Not quite a question." 3 days, the young man answered. "I left my father's house in anger, and I've been trying to think of how to go back ever since. And I haven't figured it out. And now it's the middle of the night, and I don't even know why I kept walking instead of stopping to rest. Except that if I stopped, I'd have to think about it. And I didn't want to think about it anymore." The words came out in a single exhausted rush, the way things do when a person has been holding them in far longer than is comfortable. Simeon lowered himself onto the bench beside him, slow and unhurried, the way he did everything. "You don't have to figure it out tonight," he said. "Tonight you just have to rest. The figuring out can wait for morning. Most figuring out is better done in daylight anyway. Things always look less impossible once the sun's up." The young man let out a breath that was almost a laugh, though there was no humor in it, only relief at being told, plainly, that he was allowed to stop. "You don't even know what I did," he said quietly. "No," Simeon agreed. "But I know what it's like to walk a long way in the dark carrying something you don't know how to put down. That's enough for tonight." He nodded toward the village behind him, the low rooftops silvered faintly with starlight, smoke long since gone from every chimney, every household asleep. There's a guest room at the widow Tabitha's house, first door past the well. She keeps it ready for exactly this. Travelers who arrive too late and too tired to go any further. Go there. Sleep. In the morning, if you still want to talk about your father, I'll be finishing my watch just as the bakers are lighting their ovens. Find me then." The young man looked at him for a long moment. Something in his tired face working to understand why a stranger would offer this kind of steadiness to someone he'd known for less than a quarter of an hour. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "You don't know me." Simeon considered the question the way he considered most things. Slowly, without rushing toward an answer that sounded impressive. "Because somebody did it for me once," he said finally. "A long time ago, when I was about your age, and about as lost as you look right now. Somebody let me rest before they asked me to explain myself. I've never forgotten what that felt like. Like the whole world could wait a little while longer. Because at least for that one night, I wasn't carrying it alone." He stood, offering the young man a hand up. Steady despite his age, the strength of a man who had spent 40 years walking a wall in all weather. "The night doesn't need you to solve anything," Simeon said. "It just needs you to rest in it. Let tomorrow worry about tomorrow. Tonight, you're not alone out here anymore. That's all that needs to be true right now." The young man rose, swaying slightly with tiredness, and let himself be guided toward the sleeping village, toward the widow's door, toward a bed and a blanket, and the particular mercy of a night that asked nothing else of him. Simeon watched him go until the door closed softly behind him, then turned back toward the wall, climbing the worn steps slowly, his staff finding its familiar rhythm against the stone. He thought, as he often did on nights like this, of how much of his work was simply this: not solving people's troubles, not carrying their burdens for them, but simply being present at the moment their strength ran out, standing at the gate when they finally arrived, letting them know, without demanding an explanation, that someone had been watching for them all along, and that the watching hadn't stopped just because the hour was late. He resumed his place at the northern corner, looking out again over the quiet road, the stars wheeling slowly overhead in their old unhurried pattern, the same pattern they'd followed every night of his 40 years on this wall, the same pattern they would follow long after he was gone. There was something steadying in that thought too, that the watching did not depend on him alone, that before Simeon ever climbed this wall, and long after he laid his staff down for the last time, someone else had been keeping watch over these hills, over this village, over every tired traveler stumbling home in the dark. Simeon's watch was small and temporary. The other watch has no end. He pulled his cloak a little tighter against the cooling air and kept walking. But if tonight you feel like that young man on the road, tired, uncertain, carrying something too heavy to explain, let yourself hear what Simeon told him. You don't have to solve anything tonight. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone, not even to God. Not right now. You only have to rest here, in the knowledge that someone has been watching for you, waiting for you to finally stop walking long enough to let yourself be found. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 2, the Weeping Mother's House. The second watch of the night was always the quietest. The hour when even the dogs stopped stirring, and the whole village seemed to sink into its deepest sleep. Simeon liked this watch the least and the most. In equal measure. Least, because it was the hour when his own tiredness pressed hardest against him. Most, because it was the hour when the village felt most fragile. Most in need of someone awake to hold its stillness together. He was passing the small square near the olive press when he heard it. A sound so faint he almost mistook it for the wind moving through the branches of the old fig tree that grew crookedly beside the well. But the wind had gone quiet an hour ago, and the sound had a shape to it that wind never has. It was crying, low, muffled, the kind of crying a person does when they are trying very hard not to be heard. Simeon paused at the edge of the square, listening. The sound came from the house of Hannah, a widow whose husband had been gone now for 11 months, and whose only son, the last of her children still living, had taken ill 3 days before. Simeon had heard the talk at the well. The boy's fever had broken twice and returned twice, and the physician who traveled between the hill villages had shaken his head in the particular way physicians do when they don't want to say the thing they're thinking. He stood for a long moment outside her door, uncertain whether his presence would comfort or intrude. It was not, strictly speaking, a watchman's duty to knock on a grieving widow's door in the middle of the night. His duty was the wall, the gate, the road. But Simeon had learned, over 40 years, that duty was a smaller thing than kindness, and that the wall would still be there in 10 minutes. He knocked, softly, and said his name so she would know it was not a stranger. The door opened a crack, and Hannah's face appeared, pale in the moonlight, her eyes red and swollen, her hair coming loose from its binding in the way that happens when a person has spent hours with their head in their hands. "Simeon," she said, and something in her voice cracked further just from saying his name, as though even that small act of speaking had used up strength she didn't have. "I heard you," Simeon said gently. "I wasn't going to just walk past." She opened the door wider, and he saw past her into the small, dim room, where a single oil lamp burned low, and where her son lay on a mat near the far wall, small and still beneath a woolen blanket, his breathing audible even from the doorway. Quick, shallow, effortful in a way that made Simeon's chest tight with an old, familiar ache. "The fever came back an hour ago," Hannah said, her voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking any louder might make it worse. "Worse than before. I sent for the physician again. but it will be hours before anyone can reach him. And I don't." Her voice broke entirely, and she pressed the back of her hand against her mouth, as though trying to hold the rest of the sentence inside her body. Simeon stepped inside without being invited further, the way an old friend does, and lowered himself carefully onto the low stool near the door. "I'm not going anywhere," he said simply. "Sit down." "Hannah, you've been standing over him for hours. I'd wager. And your legs are shaking even if you haven't noticed." She looked at him with an expression somewhere between gratitude and disbelief, as though she had forgot it was possible for someone to simply say, "I'm not going anywhere," and mean it without conditions. She sank onto the mat beside her son, one hand resting on his small chest, feeling the quick rise and fall of it beneath her palm. "I keep thinking," she said quietly, "that if I stop watching him, even for a moment, something terrible will happen. As though my watching is the only thing holding him here." She let out a broken, humorless laugh. "I know that isn't true. I know my watching doesn't control his fever. But I can't make myself look away." Simeon nodded slowly. Understanding this in the particular way, a man who had spent his whole life watching for danger understood it. "I know that feeling," he said. "Every watchman knows that feeling. You start to believe the watching itself is what's keeping everyone safe. That if you blink, if you rest, if you look away even for a breath, the thing you fear will come rushing in through the gap." He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "But Hannah, I've walked that wall for 40 years, and I'll tell you something true. My watching has never once been the only thing standing between this village and harm. I've simply been the one small piece of a much larger watching. There's another who doesn't need to blink, who doesn't grow tired at the second watch of the night, who was keeping this village, and this house, and this boy, long before I ever picked up a staff, and who will keep watching long after I've laid it down." Hannah's hand tightened slightly on her son's chest, feeling the small rise and fall continue beneath her palm. "Then why does it still feel like everything depends on me not looking away?" She whispered. "Because you love him," Simeon said simply. "That's all that is. It isn't weakness, and it isn't a failure of trust. It's just love. Doing what love does. Refusing to look away from what it cannot bear to lose." He reached over, slowly, and rested his weathered hand lightly on her shoulder, the way you might steady a young soldier before a difficult watch. But love and trust aren't opposites. Hannah, you can love him with your whole watching heart, and still let yourself believe that the greater watching doesn't depend on your eyes staying open. You're allowed to close them for a moment. You're allowed to rest your head against the wall behind you. He will still be breathing when you open them again. And even if, in your fear, you imagine the worst, know this: whatever happens in this house tonight, it does not happen outside of the sight of the one who sees everything, who has never once looked away from a single sparrow that falls, let alone a child as loved as this one. Hannah began to cry again, but the sound was different now. Less clenched, less desperate. Something in it beginning to loosen the way a fist slowly opens. Simeon stayed where he was, hand steady on her shoulder, saying nothing more for a long while, simply letting his presence be the only thing he offered, the way he had offered it to the young traveler at the gate not 2 hours before. After a time, the boy's breathing seemed to ease. Not fully, not enough to erase the fear entirely, but enough that his small chest rose and fell with slightly less effort, slightly less strain. Hannah noticed it too, and some of the rigidity went out of her shoulders. Rest your eyes, just for a moment, Simeon said softly. I'll watch him with you. 2 sets of eyes instead of 1. And behind both of ours, a 3rd set that never closes at all. Hannah didn't sleep. Not fully, but she allowed herself to lean back against the wall, her hand still resting on her son's chest, her eyes closing for stretches of a few minutes at a time, opening again, closing again, the way exhausted grief finally begins to yield when it's no longer forced to stand entirely alone. Simeon stayed until the edges of the sky outside the small window began to hint, faintly, at the coming of the 3rd watch. Not dawn yet, not nearly, but the deepest, darkest part of the night beginning, almost imperceptibly, to loosen its grip. The boy's fever had not broken by the time Simeon rose quietly to leave, but his breathing had steadied further, and Hannah had, at last, fallen into something that resembled real sleep. Her head tilted against the wall, her hand still resting protectively over her son's small chest. Simeon let himself out into the cool night air, glancing back once at the small, dim window before returning to his rounds. He thought, as he walked, of how much of grief was simply this: the terrible belief that our watching alone holds the world together, and the slow, hard-won relief of discovering that it was never meant to be carried alone in the first place. Somewhere above the village, above the hills, above every small dim window where someone kept a fearful vigil tonight, a greater watch continued, unbroken, unhurried, and utterly without need of rest. What if tonight you're the one holding vigil over a worry, a fear, a person you love who is struggling, or simply over your own tired heart? You don't have to hold it alone, and you don't have to hold it perfectly. Your watching matters. Your love matters. But it was never meant to be the only thing standing between you and the dark. there is another watching too, one who does not blink, who does not grow weary, who sees what you cannot see and holds what you cannot hold. You are allowed to rest your eyes tonight. When the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 3, the storm on the lake. By the third watch, Simeon's rounds had carried him to the far side of the village, where the hill sloped down toward a small lake, really more of a wide, calm pool fed by a mountain stream, though the villagers had always called it the lake. The way small places often borrow grander names for the things they love. A handful of fishing boats were kept there, and a handful of fishermen who rose long before dawn to work the water while it was still glassy and undisturbed. Tonight, though, the water was not glassy. Somewhere in the hills to the west, a storm had gathered without warning, the kind that sometimes rolled down off the higher peaks with no more notice than a sudden coolness in the air and a strange stillness among the birds. Simeon had felt it coming an hour before, in the way the warm cornerstone of the wall had gone cold too early, in the way the crickets had fallen silent all at once instead of trailing off gradually. He'd quickened his pace toward the lake without entirely knowing why. Some old instinct pulling him there before his mind had caught up to the reason. He arrived at the shore just as the wind hit in earnest. A hard gust that bent the reeds flat and sent a spray of cold droplets across his face. Out on the water, dark against the churning gray, he could make out a single small boat, tossing hard, a lantern swinging wildly from its bow. 2 figures were in it, young men, brothers, the sons of a fisherman named Amos, who had gone out earlier that evening to check the nets before the morning's work, and had clearly misjudged how quickly the weather would turn. Simeon could hear their voices carried faintly on the wind, high and frightened, fighting against oars that seemed to do little against the sudden chop of the water. He didn't hesitate. He set down his staff, cupped his hands around his mouth, and called out toward the water with the full force of 40 years of a voice trained to carry across distance in the dark. Head for the shore, straight in. Don't fight the angle. Just aim for my voice. He kept calling, over and over, a steady beacon of sound cutting through the wind and the slap of waves against the hull. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, the small boat began to turn, the brothers pulling hard against oars that fought them at every stroke, guided not by sight, for the shore was nearly invisible in the dark and the spray, but by the sound of an old man's voice refusing to stop calling. It felt, to Simeon, like a very long time, though it could not have been more than a quarter of an hour. He waded out into the shallows despite the cold, despite his age, until the water was at his knees, and kept his hand raised, kept calling, until at last the bow of the boat scraped against the shallow stones, and the two brothers half fell, half scrambled out of it, soaked through and shaking, more from fear than cold. Simeon helped haul the boat the rest of the way onto the shore, then turned to the two young men, both of them younger than the traveler he'd met at the gate hours before, both of them wide-eyed with the particular shock of having stared very closely at the possibility of not making it home. "We thought," the older of the two started, then stopped, unable to finish the sentence, his teeth chattering too hard to form the words cleanly. "Japanese letter, Japanese letter, Japanese letter," Simeon said, already unwrapping his own cloak and settling it over the younger brother's shoulders. "You don't have to say it. I know what you thought." They sat together on the shore for a while, the storm beginning, slowly, to spend itself, the wind easing from a roar to steady push. The rain, which had never quite arrived in full force, tapering to a fine mist. The brothers huddled close, still trembling, watching the water that only minutes before had seemed ready to swallow them whole, now settling, gradually, back into something almost calm. "I've never been that frightened," the younger brother said quietly, once his teeth had stopped chattering enough to speak clearly. "Not ever. I thought the boat would go under. I thought—" He shook his head, unable to continue. Simeon nodded slowly, watching the water with him. "The lake doesn't ask permission before it changes," he said. "That's the hardest thing about water, and about storms, and if I'm honest, about most of life. It can be glass still one moment and roaring the next, and there's rarely any warning worth trusting. You did everything right tonight. You didn't panic into stillness. You kept rowing. You listened for a voice in the dark and followed it. That's not nothing. That's most of what courage actually is. But we couldn't have made it back on our own," the older brother said, "if you hadn't been on the shore." "You weren't on your own," Simeon said gently. "I was there, but even before I called out, even in the worst of it, when you couldn't hear anything but wind and couldn't see anything but black water, you were not as alone out there as it felt. I've spent my whole life on this wall, believing something my father taught me when I was younger than either of you. Something an old song of our people says about storms and deep waters. That when the waves rise, when the wind roars, there is one who can still it all with nothing more than a word, who can turn the roar of a storm into a whisper, the way a mother quiets a crying child. I don't say that to make light of how frightened you were tonight. I say it because it's true, and because I think you needed a voice in the dark tonight more than you needed an explanation of why the storm came at all." The brothers were quiet for a while, watching the water continue to settle, the moon beginning to break faintly through the thinning clouds. silvering the surface until it looked almost like nothing had happened there at all. "Will you tell our father?" the younger one asked, a trace of the old fear returning. Not of the storm now, but of what would come after it. Simeon considered this. "I'll tell him his sons showed good sense in a hard moment." He said, "That's the truth, and it's the part worth telling. The rest, the part where you misjudged the weather, I expect you've already learned that lesson more thoroughly than any scolding from me or your father could teach you. Some lessons the world teaches better than we can. Our job now is just to get you dry and warm and let you sleep. And let the lesson settle where it needs to settle without piling more fear on top of what you've already carried tonight." He helped them pull the boat further up onto the shore, secured it against the last of the wind, and walked with them back toward the village, one hand resting lightly on each of their shoulders, the way you might steady two people still finding their footing after nearly losing it entirely. The storm continued to fade behind them as they walked, the wind dropping to a murmur, the clouds thinning to reveal, here and there, the return of familiar stars. By the time they reached Amos's door, the two brothers had stopped shaking, though a residual tremor of adrenaline still moved through them now and then. The kind that takes hours to fully leave the body, even after the danger has passed. Simeon left them there, in their father's care, and turned back toward the wall, his own clothes still damp and cold against his skin, his staff retrieved from where he'd left it on the shore. He thought, walking back, of how strange it was that fear so rarely announces itself in advance. How a lake can be glass still and roaring within the space of an hour. How a heart can be calm and then suddenly, without warning, caught in a storm of its own. But he thought too of the voice that had carried across the water in the dark, steady and unbroken, refusing to stop calling until the boat found its way home. And of how much larger, how much steadier, was the voice that had once stilled an entire sea with nothing more than a word of command. A voice that did not tire, did not lose its nerve, did not stop calling out to those caught in the roar of their own fear. But if tonight your mind feels like that lake, glasscom one moment, churning the next, waves of worry rising without warning, know that you are not as alone in the storm as it feels. There's a voice calling toward you even now, steady, unhurried, refusing to stop until you find your way to calmer water. You don't have to still the storm yourself. You only have to keep listening for the voice that already knows how. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 4, the frightened soldier at the wall. The fourth watch of the night was the one Simeon had come, over the years, to think of as the loneliest, not because he was alone in it, but because it was the hour when the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Caught between the deep of the night and the first far-off hint of morning that was still hours away from arriving. It was the hour when fear, if it was going to visit a person at all, tended to visit hardest, because the body was tired and the mind had run out of daylight distractions to hide behind. Simeon had returned to the wall after seeing the fishermen safely home. His cloak still damp, his old bones aware. In the particular way old bones are always aware of just how late the hour had grown. He climbed the worn steps slowly, more slowly than he had earlier in the night, and made his way toward the eastern corner of the wall, where a young soldier named Judah had been posted for his first night of watch duty. Judah was new to the wall, barely more than a boy. Really, though he wore his father's old armor with the particular stiffness of someone trying very hard to look like it fit him properly. He'd been assigned to watch duty as part of his training. A routine first posting meant to teach him patience and vigilance. Nothing more. But as Simeon approached, he could see, even in the dim starlight, that something was wrong. Judah stood rigid against the wall, spear gripped so tightly his knuckles had gone pale, his eyes darting toward every shadow, every rustle of wind in the distant brush, as though the darkness itself had become an enemy he expected to leap out at any moment. "Judah," Simeon said gently, announcing himself before he drew close, careful not to startle a young man already strung as tight as a bowstring. "How goes the watch?" Judah startled anyway, spear jerking up half an inch before he caught himself, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land. "Fine," he said, too quickly. "It's fine." "Quiet." Simeon came to stand beside him, resting his forearms on the top of the wall, looking out over the same dark hills Judah had been watching with such tense vigilance. "You don't look fine," he said, not unkindly. "You look like a man who spent the last 3 hours convinced something terrible is about to happen." Judah's shoulders sagged, just slightly, the rigid posture cracking under the simple relief of being seen clearly. "I keep hearing things," he admitted, his voice low, almost embarrassed. "Every sound out there, every branch that moves, every animal in the brush. My mind turns it into something worse. Raiders, wolves, I don't know. I keep imagining all the ways this could go wrong. And the longer I stand here, the more convinced I become that something's coming, even though nothing has come, and nothing probably will. That's the fourth watch for you," Simeon said, nodding slowly, as though this were the most ordinary thing in the world, which, in his experience, it was. It's the hour fear likes best. The body's tired. The mind's had nothing to do for hours but circle the same worries over and over. And everything in the dark starts to look like a threat, even when it's only ever been a branch, or a fox, or the wind finding a gap in the rocks. How do you not feel that way? Judah asked, glancing sideways at him. You've walked this wall for 40 years. Doesn't the dark ever frighten you anymore? Simeon considered the question honestly, the way he considered most things. It still can. He admitted, I won't pretend an old watchman's heart never quickens at a strange sound in the night. But somewhere along the way, and it took years, Judah, I won't lie to you and say it happened quickly. I learned the difference between watching for danger and being consumed by the fear of it. Those sound like the same thing, but they're not. Watching is steady. It's attentive without being frantic. Fear, when it takes over completely, doesn't actually make you a better watchman. It just makes you exhausted and jumpy and convinced of dangers that were never really there. While the real dangers, if they ever come, still have to be met with a clear head, not a frightened one. So what do I do? Judah asked. How do I watch without being afraid? Simeon was quiet for a moment, looking out over the dark hills, the same hills he'd watched for 4 decades, the same shadows that had never once, in all that time, turned out to be anything worse than a fox or a branch or a trick of tired eyes. There's an old promise, he said slowly, that my father taught me when I first stood a night watch, younger even than you. It says that a person who makes their home in the shelter of the Most High doesn't need to fear the terror of the night, or the arrow that flies by day, or the danger that stalks in darkness. Not because nothing bad ever happens. Things do happen. Judah, storms come, illness comes, hard nights come. I won't lie to you about that either. But because underneath all our watching, underneath even the most faithful watchman standing his post, there's a deeper watching that never sleeps, never grows tired, never gets caught by surprise. My job on this wall was never really to be the last line of defense against everything that could possibly go wrong. My job was just to be faithful to my small part of the watching, and to trust that a much larger watching held everything I couldn't see and couldn't control. Judah's grip on his spear loosened, just slightly, his shoulders easing down from where they'd been hunched up near his ears for hours. That sounds like it takes a long time to learn, he said. It does, Simeon agreed, with the faint, warm humor of a man who has learned to laugh gently at his own long journey. 40 years, and I still find myself gripping my staff too tight on nights like tonight. When a storm rolls in unexpectedly, or a young man arrives at the gate more troubled than he lets on. But here's what I can tell you tonight. On your very first watch, You don't have to have it all figured out yet. You just have to stand here, as steady as you're able, and let yourself believe, even if only a little, even if only for tonight, that you are not the only one watching these hills, that whatever comes, or more likely, whatever doesn't come, you are not facing this night alone, with only your own courage to rely on. They stood together for a long while after that, not speaking, simply watching the dark hills in companionable silence. The tense rigidity gradually leaving Judah's posture, his breathing slowing to match the unhurried rhythm of the older man beside him. Somewhere in the distance, a fox called out, a sharp, sudden bark that would have sent Judah's heart racing an hour earlier. Now he only glanced toward the sound, recognized it, and let it pass without alarm. "Thank you," Judah said quietly, after a long while, "for staying. You didn't have to. I remember my first watch," Simeon said, a small smile in his voice. "Even in the dark, I remember every shadow looking like an enemy, every sound like the beginning of disaster. Someone stayed with me that night too, an old watchman near the end of his years, who told me almost exactly what I've just told you. It seemed only right to pass it along." He stayed with Judah until the young man's breathing had fully settled, until his grip on the spear had eased into something more like readiness than terror, and until the fourth watch began, slowly, to give way toward the fifth. Then he continued his own rounds, leaving Judah steadier than he'd found him, and carrying with him the quiet satisfaction of an old truth passed faithfully from one generation of watchers to the next. But if tonight your own mind has been turning shadows into threats, imagining all the ways things could go wrong before they've had any chance to actually happen, let yourself hear what Simeon told Judah. Fear at this hour is common. It does not mean something is truly wrong. It only means you're tired, and the night is long, and your mind is doing what tired minds do in the dark. You don't have to watch alone tonight. Let your grip loosen. Let your shoulders come down from around your ears. You are being watched over even now. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near. God is steady. And you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 5, the child's fever. The fifth watch of the night carried Simeon back through the heart of the village, past the well, past the olive press, past Hannah's small dim window, which was quiet now. The lamp inside burned down to almost nothing. Both mother and son finally resting in the fragile peace that sometimes comes just before dawn. He paused there only a moment, long enough to see the faint, steady rise and fall of the boy's blanket in the dim light, and to feel a small, grateful loosening in his own chest at the sight of it. He continued on, his rounds carrying him now toward the southern edge of the village, where the poorer households clustered closer together, their walls thinner, their roofs patched more often than replaced. It was here, passing a narrow lane between two low houses, that he heard a different kind of sound than Hannah's earlier weeping. Not crying exactly, but a low, worried murmuring, the particular cadence of someone talking softly to a child who is too sick to fully understand the words, but who needs, all the same, to hear a voice. The house belonged to a family Simeon knew only a little. A potter named Reuben and his wife, Lee, whose youngest daughter, a girl of perhaps 4 years, had been unwell for the better part of a week with a fever that came and went like an unwelcome guest who couldn't decide whether to stay or leave. Simeon paused outside the door, uncertain again, as he had been outside Hannah's door, whether his presence would be welcome at such an hour. But something in the tired, frightened cadence of Lee's murmuring pulled him forward. The same instinct that had carried him toward the storm-tossed lake hours before. He knocked softly, and Reuben answered, his face drawn with the particular exhaustion of a father who has not slept properly in days. Worry etched into the lines around his eyes. "Simeon," he said, surprised. "It's late. Is something wrong at the wall?" "No," Simeon said. "I heard your wife through the window. I wondered if there was anything I could do." Reuben hesitated, then stepped back to let him in. Too tired, perhaps, to question why an old watchman would trouble himself over a sick child in a potter's house at the 5th watch of the night. Inside, Lee sat on a low stool beside a small bed. Her daughter, Miriam, lying restless beneath a thin blanket, her small face flushed with fever, her breathing quick and shallow, her eyes half open but unfocused, caught in the particular restless half-sleep that fever brings. "She won't settle," Lee said, not looking up, her voice worn thin with days of worry. "Every time I think she's finally sleeping, she wakes again, crying, and I don't know what else to try. We've done everything the physician suggested. Cool cloths, willow bark tea, and still the fever comes and goes, and I'm so tired. Simeon, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." Simeon lowered himself carefully onto the floor beside the small bed, his old knees protesting the movement, though he made no complaint of it. He looked at the child for a long moment, her small chest rising and falling too quickly, her cheeks flushed, her lips moving faintly as though caught in some restless half-dream. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the child. And when Lee nodded, too exhausted to question it, he reached out and rested his weathered hand very lightly on the child's forehead, the way he had once done for his own children. Decades ago, in a house that had long since fallen quiet with grown children of their own now. "She's warm," he said softly, "but not as warm as fear makes it feel. Fever frightens us more than it usually needs to, especially in the deep of the night, when everything feels larger and more dangerous than it will in daylight." That's what the physician said too, Reuben admitted, settling onto the floor on the other side of the bed. "But it's hard to believe when you're the one watching her struggle to breathe evenly." "I know," Simeon said. "I buried a child of my own many years ago, to a fever that didn't break the way this one likely will." He said it plainly, without drama, the way old grief is sometimes spoken of by those who have carried it long enough to hold it without flinching. So I don't say this lightly, and I don't say it to make light of your fear. But I've also held 2 other children of mine through fevers just like this one. Fevers that felt every bit as frightening in the deep of the night, and watched them wake the next morning as though nothing had happened at all, running through the yard by midday like the whole ordeal had been nothing more than a bad dream. Fever in the night feels like the end of the world. Fever in the morning light very often turns out to have simply been fever. Lee's eyes filled with tears, though something in her posture had softened slightly, the rigid worry easing just a fraction. "I keep thinking of the old song," she said quietly, "the one about walking through the valley of the shadow. I keep thinking that's where we are right now. In that valley, in the deepest, darkest part of it. And I don't know if we're walking through it, or if we're going to be stuck in it forever." "You're walking through it," Simeon said, with the quiet certainty of a man who had walked through such valleys himself. "More than once. That's what the song promises. Not that the valley won't come, because it always comes, sooner or later, to every house and every heart, but that you don't walk through it alone, and that it is a valley to walk through, not a place to stay forever. There's a rod and a staff in that old song too, the shepherd's tools, meant to guide and to comfort, not just to defend. I think that's what tonight is. A rod and a staff. In whatever small way, an old watchman and a worried mother and father can offer each other in the deep of the night. Comfort as much as protection. Presence as much as solutions." He kept his hand resting lightly on Miriam's forehead, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, her restless murmuring began to quiet, her small body settling more deeply into the thin mattress beneath her. Her breathing, though still quick, growing marginally less labored. It might have been nothing more than the natural ebb of the fever, the same rhythm it had followed for days. Or it might have been the simple, undeniable comfort of not being alone in the room with her fear any longer. Simeon didn't try to decide which it was. He simply stayed. "Tell me about your child," Lee said quietly. After a long while, glancing at him with the particular gentleness people reserve for grief they recognize in someone else. "The one you lost." Simeon smiled. Faintly, the smile of old sorrow long since folded into something softer than pain alone. "Her name was Rivka," he said. "She had her mother's stubbornness and my mother's laugh. And she used to follow me partway along my rounds when she was small, until she got too tired and I'd carry her home on my shoulders. I still think of her most nights, somewhere around the 5th watch, which was always her favorite time to wake and demand a story." He looked down at Miriam, whose breathing had steadied further, her small face relaxing out of its earlier, fevered restlessness into something closer to real sleep. "I don't tell you this to frighten you further. I tell you because I know what the deepest fear feels like. And I also know that most nights, Lee, are not that night. Most fevers break. Most children run through the yard again by midday. And even on the rare nights when they don't, even in the valley's darkest turn, there is still a shepherd walking it with you, rod and staff in hand, refusing to leave you to walk it alone." Lee reached over and took her husband's hand, and the two of them sat together beside their daughter's bed as the 5th watch wore on, Simeon staying with them a while longer, until Miriam's fever, at last, seemed to break in earnest, her small body relaxing into a deep, easy sleep, her breathing slow, and even for the first time in days, her forehead, when Lee touched it again with trembling fingers, noticeably cooler than before. "Thank you," Reuben said, his voice thick with relief and exhaustion in equal measure, as Simeon finally rose to continue his rounds. "For staying, for telling us about Rivka." "Rest now," Simeon said gently. "Both of you. The worst of the night has passed. I think, for her and for you. Let yourselves sleep." He let himself out into the cool pre-dawn air, glancing back once at the small house, now quiet, now peaceful, before continuing along his rounds. He thought, as he walked, of Rivka, of the particular ache that never entirely leaves a parent who has lost a child, but also of the particular gift it had become, over the years, to be able to sit beside other frightened parents in the deep of the night and offer them something he wished. More than anything, someone had been able to offer him all those years ago. Not a guarantee that nothing bad would ever happen, but the steady, unshakable presence of someone who understood and who stayed. But if tonight you're walking through your own valley, a fear for someone you love, a worry that feels too large for the darkness to hold, a grief old or new that the quiet hours always seem to bring closer to the surface, you are not walking through it alone. However dark this particular turn in the valley feels, it is a valley to walk through. not a place you'll be left to stay forever. And even here, especially here, there is a shepherd walking beside you, rod and staff in hand, refusing to let go. When the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 6, the coming of dawn. The sixth and final watch of the night was, in Simeon's 40 years of walking this walk, always the strangest hour. The hour when the sky did not yet show any true light, and yet something in the air had already begun to change. The deepest cold of the night had passed, replaced by a stillness that felt less like darkness settling in, and more like darkness beginning. Very quietly, to loosen its hold, Simeon made his way back toward the northern corner of the wall, where he had begun his rounds so many hours before, greeting the young traveler on the road. His body was tired now. In the particular way an old man's body grows tired after a long night of walking. Kneeling, wading into cold water, and sitting on hard floors beside those who needed him. But his heart, strangely, did not feel tired at all. It felt full, the way a heart feels after a long day of meaningful work, rather than the hollow, restless tiredness of a day spent on nothing that mattered. He reached the platform overlooking the road and settled onto the low stone bench there. The same bench where the young traveler had sat hours before, and allowed himself, for the first time that night, a few moments of simple stillness. He looked out over the valley, still dark, still quiet, the road a pale ribbon winding down toward hills that were themselves still black shapes against a sky only just beginning. In the very furthest east, to show the faintest hint of gray, he thought of everyone he had met that night. The young traveler, now asleep in the widow's guest room. The hard conversation with his father still waiting for him in the morning, but waiting now from a place of rest instead of exhaustion. Hannah, asleep at last beside her son, whose fever had not broken but whose breathing had steadied enough to let them both rest. The two young fishermen, dry and warm in their father's house. The storm's fright already beginning to settle into the kind of story they would tell for years, softened at the edges by time. Judah, still standing his post at the eastern corner, steadier now than he had been 3 hours before. His grip on his spear, no longer white-knuckled with fear, but simply ready, the way a watchman's grip should be. And Reuben and Lee, and little Miriam, sleeping soundly now, her fever broken, her small body finally at peace. 6 encounters, across 6 watches, and in every single one, Simeon thought, the same simple truth had been the only medicine any of them had really needed. Not a solution, not an explanation, not even, most of the time, any real change in their circumstances, just presence, just someone staying, just the reminder, offered again and again in different forms to different frightened hearts, that the night, however long, however dark, however heavy, did not have to be carried alone. He thought too, as he often did at this hour, of how small his own part in all of it truly was. He had not calmed the storm on the lake. The storm had calmed on its own, in its own time, the way storms do. He had not healed Miriam's fever, or Hannah's son's illness. Their bodies had done what bodies do, fighting and resting and slowly, gradually, mending. He had not solved the young traveler's trouble with his father, or erased Judah's fear entirely, or brought back Hannah's husband or his own daughter Rivkah. He had simply been present. He had simply stayed awake so that others could rest. And in his 40 years of doing exactly that, night after night, he had come to believe, more and more deeply with each passing year, that this small, humble, unglamorous work, the work of simply staying, simply watching, simply refusing to leave someone alone in their fear, was perhaps the closest a person could come to reflecting the character of the one who did the same for all of them. Every night, without exception, without growing tired, without ever once needing to be relieved from the watch. The sky continued its slow change as he sat there, the gray at the horizon deepening, very gradually, towards something that held, at its faintest edges, the barest hint of gold. Somewhere below in the village, a rooster stirred, not yet crowing, but shifting on its perch in the particular way roosters do just before they announce the morning. The air had grown very still, the wind of the earlier storm long since spent. The crickets, which had fallen silent hours ago, now beginning, one by one, to resume their quiet song, as though even they understood that the deepest part of the night had passed and it was safe. Now, to make a little noise again. Simeon closed his eyes for a moment, not to sleep. His watch was not yet over, but simply to feel the stillness of it, the particular sacredness of this hour that belonged neither fully to night nor fully to day. A threshold hour, a between hour, the hour when the whole world seemed to be holding its breath in anticipation of the light that was coming. Slowly, surely, the way it always came, the way it had come every single morning of his 40 years on this wall, without a single exception. He thought of the old song again, the one he had spoken of to Hannah. Weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes in the morning. He had always found something deeply true in the ordering of those words. Not that the night doesn't matter. Not that grief and fear and storms and fevers should be dismissed or rushed past. The song did not say weeping is foolish, or weeping shouldn't happen. It simply said weeping lingers for a night. A night, not forever. And that morning, faithfully, reliably, without fail, comes after it, every single time. The night was real, but it was not the last word. It never had been. He rose from the bench, his old joints protesting the movement after so many hours of walking, and made his way slowly along the last stretch of the wall, watching the light continue its slow climb into the sky, gold now spreading wider along the horizon, touching the undersides of the few thin clouds that remained from the earlier storm, turning them soft shades of pink and amber. Below him, the village was beginning, very gradually, to stir, a door opening somewhere, the first thin trail of smoke rising from a chimney as someone rekindled a cooking fire, the distant clink of a bucket being lowered into the well. Simeon reached the eastern corner just as Judah's replacement arrived to relieve him for the day, and the two young soldiers exchanged a few quiet words before Judah, looking noticeably steadier than he had 3 hours earlier, made his way down from the wall toward his own bed and a well-earned rest. Simeon continued on, completing the final stretch of his rounds as the light grew stronger, until at last he reached the gate where his night had begun, and where the baker's ovens were already being lit, the first warm smell of the day's bread beginning to drift through the cool morning air. He thought, as he always did at the end of a long watch, that there was something deeply right about the fact that the night always ended this way. Not with fanfare, not with any dramatic announcement, but simply with light returning, quietly, faithfully, the way it always had, the way it always would. He had not caused the dawn to come. He could not have hastened it by a single moment, no matter how urgently any of the frightened hearts he'd sat with that night might have wished for it. But he had been faithful to his small part of the night. And now the dawn, faithful to its part, was arriving exactly on time, exactly as promised, exactly as it always did. But wherever you are in your own night right now, whatever storm, whatever fever, whatever fear, whatever grief has kept you turning restlessly beneath your own blanket, know this: the dawn is coming, not because of anything you have to do to hasten it, not because you've watched hard enough or worried well enough to earn it, but because that is simply what dawn does. It comes faithfully, reliably, every single time. You're weeping, if you are weeping tonight, is only for the night. Morning is already on its way. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Reflective application for anxious listeners. Let's rest here for a while. Friend, before we move any further, I want to speak directly to you now. Not to Simeon, not to Hannah, not to Judah or the young traveler on the road, but to you, exactly as you are, right now, in whatever room you're lying in, with whatever thoughts have been circling quietly beneath the surface of this story tonight. Maybe, as you listened, you recognized yourself in one of those 6 people. Maybe you're the traveler, carrying something heavy that you don't know how to put down, walking a long road in the dark because stopping means having to feel the weight of it. If that's you, hear this again, gently. You don't have to figure it out tonight. Whatever it is, whatever you did, or didn't do, or are afraid you'll have to face in the morning, tonight is only for resting. The figuring out can wait for daylight, when things always, somehow, look a little less impossible than they do at this hour. Or maybe you're Hannah, sitting vigil over something you love, convinced that you're watching, you're worrying, your refusal to look away, even for a moment, is the only thing holding everything together. If that's you, I want you to notice something. You have been carrying that belief for a long time, haven't you? The belief that if you relax, even slightly, even for a breath, everything might fall apart. That belief is heavy. It was never meant to be carried alone. And honestly, friend, it was never meant to be carried at all. Not by you. Not entirely. You are allowed to love deeply and still let your grip loosen. Your love does not depend on your exhaustion to prove itself real. Maybe you're one of the young fishermen, caught in a storm that came on faster than you expected, still feeling the aftershock of fear even now, hours or days or months after the water calmed. Storms like that leave a residue, don't they? A jumpiness, a wariness, even after the danger has passed. If that's you, be gentle with yourself tonight. It's all right that your body is still catching up to the fact that you made it through. Let it catch up slowly. There's no rush. Perhaps you're Judah, new to something hard, gripping too tightly out of fear that you'll fail, turning every shadow into a threat because your mind has had too many quiet hours to spin worst-case scenarios out of nothing. If that's you, let your shoulders come down from around your ears right now. As you're listening, you don't have to have it all figured out yet. You're allowed to be new at something and still faithful in your small part of it, without needing to carry the whole weight of the outcome. Or maybe, tonight, you're Reuben and Lee, sitting beside something fragile, something you cannot fix no matter how much you love it, feeling the particular helplessness of a fear that no amount of effort on your part can fully resolve. If that's you, I want to remind you gently of what Simeon said. Most nights are not the worst night. Most fevers break, most storms pass, and even on the rare nights when the outcome is harder than we hoped, you are never asked to walk that valley without a shepherd beside you. And maybe, tonight, you are simply Simeon, tired, faithful, carrying your own grief quietly while still showing up for everyone else's. If that's you, please hear this most clearly of all. It is all right to be tired. It is all right to have carried something heavy for a long time and to still be carrying it. Your faithfulness does not require you to never feel the weight of it. You, too, are allowed to be watched over. You do not always have to be the one doing the watching. Whichever of these you found yourself in tonight, or perhaps some quiet blend of several, I want you to notice the one thing that was true in every single encounter along that wall. Not one of those people solved their own fear entirely on their own. Not one of them was told to simply try harder, or worry less, or figure it out through sheer willpower. In every single case, the comfort came the same way. Someone stayed. Someone was present. Someone reminded them, gently and without judgment, that the night, however long, however heavy, was not theirs to carry by themselves. That is what I want to leave with you now, as we move toward the close of this story. Whatever has kept your own mind circling tonight, the argument you haven't resolved, the health you're worried about, the grief that always seems to surface loudest in the dark, the fear of tomorrow that feels too big to set down. You are not required to solve it before you're allowed to sleep. You are not required to have perfect faith, or a completely quiet mind, or an answer to every anxious question before you're allowed to rest. You are only asked tonight to do what every person on that wall eventually did. To let yourself be found. To stop pretending you have to carry it alone. To let the watching that has been happening around you and over you, quietly, faithfully, whether you've noticed it or not, finally settle into your body as something you can trust, at least for tonight, at least enough to close your eyes. If your thoughts try to pull you back into circling, into replaying the day, or rehearsing tomorrow, or turning small shadows into large threats the way Judah did in the fourth watch of the night, that's all right. That's simply what tired minds do in the dark. You don't have to fight those thoughts. You don't have to win an argument against your own anxiety. You can simply notice them, gently, the way Simeon noticed the foxes bark in the distance. Recognize them for what they are, and let them pass without following them any further. Breathe with me again for a moment, if you're still awake enough to. In, slowly, and out, slower still, feeling your body sink a little deeper into wherever you're resting, feeling the weight of the day, and the weight of tonight's worries settling downward, out of your chest, out of your shoulders, out of your mind, and into the stillness around you, where they can rest too, at least until morning. You are not the last watch standing tonight. You never were. There is a greater watching that has held every person in this story, and holds you too, right now, exactly as you are, exactly where you are. Let that be enough for tonight. Let that be all you need to believe, just for these next few hours, as sleep begins, gently, to find you. Prayer of surrender. Let's pray together one more time before we rest fully into sleep. Lord, thank you for walking through this night with us, the way Simeon walked his wall, watch after watch, faithful and unhurried, never once looking away. Thank you that your watching does not depend on our worthiness, our effort, or our ability to stay strong. Thank you that you have been near every single person in this story tonight, and that you are just as near to the one listening now. Tonight, we set down what we've been carrying. We set down the argument we haven't resolved, the worry we've been circling for hours, the grief that surfaces loudest in the quiet, the fear of tomorrow that feels too big for tonight. We set it down, not because it doesn't matter, but because it was never meant to be carried alone. And it was never meant to be carried through the night on our own strength. We give you our racing thoughts. Slow them, Lord, the way the storm on the lake slowed to a whisper. We give you our tight grip, the grip of Judah on his spear, the grip of Hannah on her son's small chest, the grip we hold on things we're afraid to lose. Loosen it, gently, finger by finger, until our hands are open and at rest. We give you our loneliness, if we feel it tonight, the sense that we're facing something no one else quite understands. Remind us, the way Simeon reminded every frightened heart on that wall, that we are seen, we are known, and we are not walking through this valley without a shepherd beside us. We give you our exhaustion, the weariness that comes not just from the day, but from carrying things far longer than we were ever meant to carry them. Let us rest now, fully, the way Hannah finally rested against the wall, the way the young traveler finally slept in the widow's guest room, the way Miriam's fever finally broke into peaceful sleep. And Lord, for anyone listening tonight who is in a harder night than this story, anyone sitting a real vigil, anyone facing a real storm, anyone genuinely afraid of what tomorrow holds, meet them with a nearness they can feel, even if they cannot yet put words to it. Be the voice calling across the water. Be the hand resting on the fevered forehead. Be the steady presence beside the tense and frightened heart. Let them know, without any doubt, that they are not carrying this alone. We release this night into your keeping. We release ourselves into your keeping. Watch over us as you have always watched, without slumber, without rest, without ever once looking away. Let us sleep now, Lord, held safely in your unhurried, unfailing care, in your steady name. Amen. Closing outro, low stimulation when DOWN. Let's stay here a little longer. Friend, in this quiet space we've made together, the story is finished now. Simeon has completed his watch. The gate of Kedar's rest stands open to a morning that has, at last, fully arrived. Golden light spreading slowly across the hillside. The baker's oven's warm. The well drawing its first bucket of the day. The whole small village beginning, gently, to wake, but you don't have to wake with it. You can stay right here, in the stillness of the night that's still wrapped around you, and let your body sink even further into rest. There's nothing left to listen for now. No more stories to follow. No more people to meet along the wall. Just this quiet voice, growing softer, and the soft sound of the night around you. Wherever you are, let your breathing slow even further. You don't need to count it anymore, or guide it with any particular rhythm. Just let it happen the way it wants to happen. Slow, easy, unhurried. The way breath moves through a body that has finally, fully let go. Let your hands rest, open and unclenched, wherever they're lying. Let your jaw soften completely. Let your shoulders sink down, heavy, into whatever is beneath them. Let your legs feel loose and warm. The last small tensions of the day melting out of them one by one. If your mind wants to wander now, let it wander somewhere gentle, perhaps back to the wall at Kedar's rest, imagining yourself walking it slowly in the cool night air, staff in hand, the stars scattered thick overhead. No urgency in your steps, nowhere in particular you need to be. Perhaps you imagine the sound of that old watchman's footsteps, steady and unhurried, somewhere nearby, keeping their familiar rhythm long after the story itself has ended. Perhaps you imagine yourself as one more sleeping household in that small village, safe behind its low stone wall, tucked into a warm bed, trusting that someone faithful is watching over the night so you don't have to. Or perhaps your mind wanders somewhere else entirely. Your own bed, your own room, the familiar shapes of your own life settling quietly into shadow around you. That's all right too. Wherever your thoughts drift now, let them drift gently, without any need to follow them too closely. The way clouds drift across a night sky without asking anything of the stars beneath them. I want to remind you, one final time, of the 6 things this night has tried to say to you, in 6 different quiet ways. that you don't have to figure everything out before you're allowed to rest, that your love for someone doesn't require you to carry your fear for them all by yourself, that storms, the ones on the water and the ones in your own mind, do not last forever, and there is a voice calling you steadily toward calmer water even now. That fear in the deep of the night so often exaggerates shadows into threats that morning always reveals to be nothing at all. That valleys, even the darkest ones, are places to walk through, not places you'll be left to stay in forever, and that you never walk through them without a shepherd close beside you. And that morning always comes, faithfully, reliably, every single time, however long tonight's watch has felt, however heavy this particular night has been. The dawn is already on its way, whether you're awake to see it arrive or not. You don't have to hold on to any of this tightly. You don't need to remember every detail of the story, or repeat every promise back to yourself like a lesson you have to pass. Just let the general shape of it settle into you. The shape of being watched over, being accompanied, being unwilling to be left alone in the dark. Let that shape be the last thing your mind carries with it as it lets go of wakefulness entirely. The ambience around you now is soft, just the faintest whisper of night wind, the occasional distant call of a cricket. Nothing sharp, nothing sudden, nothing that asks anything of you at all. You can let this sound become the outer edge of your awareness, a soft boundary between you and the rest of the world, while everything inside that boundary grows quieter, and quieter, and quieter still. If you find yourself still awake as we come to the very end of this recording, that's all right too. You haven't failed at anything. Sleep isn't something you force your way into. It's something you allow. Slowly, the way a held breath is finally released. The way clenched hands slowly unclench. The way a tired traveler finally sits down after a very long road. If it hasn't come yet, it's coming. Let yourself rest in that certainty, the way Simeon rested in the certainty of the dawn. Even in the deepest, darkest hour of the night, when the light was still hours away and utterly invisible, and yet no less certain to arrive, you are being watched over right now, in this very moment, exactly as you are, not because of anything you've done to earn it, not because you've prayed the right words, or thought the right thoughts, or managed to quiet your mind completely, simply because that watching has never once depended on you. It has always been freely given, steady and unbroken, long before you were ever aware of it, and it will continue long after you've drifted, finally, into sleep. So let go now. Friend, let go of the day behind you, and the day ahead of you, and let yourself rest fully in this one quiet, unhurried night. There is nothing more you need to do. There is nothing more you need to carry. There is only this soft dark, and this steady, watchful presence surrounding you, and the slow, certain approach of a morning that is already, even now, on its way. Rest well tonight. When the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Good night. beyond the wall of Kedar's rest, past the last terraced field, the land rose again into a second hill, wilder and less tended than the one the village sat on. It was here, on nights when the weather allowed it, that an old shepherd named Ezra kept his flock, not because the grazing was especially good, but because he had kept his flock on that same hillside for nearly 50 years, since before Simeon had ever picked up a watchman's staff. And old habits, like old friendships, are not easily set aside. Simeon caught sight of Ezra's small fire from the wall as the fifth watch stretched on. A single point of orange light on the dark shoulder of the far hill, flickering low the way a fire does when its keeper has let it burn down rather than feed it. He knew that fire well. He had seen it burning at this hour more nights than he could count. And he had learned, over the years, to read its size the way another man might read a face. Tonight, burning low and small, it told him something. Ezra was not tending it properly. Ezra was distracted, or troubled, or simply too tired to rise and add another branch. He made his way down from the wall and out through the smaller side gate reserved for exactly this kind of errand, his staff finding the familiar path across the field and up the gentler slope of the far hill, until he came within sight of the fire and the old shepherd sitting beside it, a blanket around his shoulders, his sheep dark shapes scattered peacefully across the hillside around him. Undisturbed, safe, sleeping the deep, unbothered sleep of animals whose shepherd has kept them from harm for longer than most of them had been alive. Ezra, Simeon called softly as he approached, so as not to startle him. Your fire's gone low. Thought I'd come see if you'd fallen asleep sitting up. Ezra looked up, and in the dim firelight Simeon could see that his old friend's face carried something heavier than simple tiredness. Not asleep, Ezra said. Just thinking. An old man's privilege. Sitting up at this hour thinking about things he probably shouldn't. Simeon lowered himself onto a flat stone near the fire, adding a small branch to it himself, coaxing the flame back up a little brighter, more out of habit than any real need. The night wasn't cold enough to require it, but there is a comfort in tending a fire regardless. The same comfort, perhaps, that there is in tending anything at all. What's an old shepherd thinking about? Out here alone at the fifth watch. Ezra was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the flames, his weathered hands folded loosely in his lap. I counted my flock twice tonight, he said finally, which I never do. Once is always enough. I know these sheep the way you know the stones of your wall. Simeon, I could count them in my sleep and never miss one. But tonight I counted twice, because somewhere in the counting, my mind wandered off to counting something else entirely. And I lost track and had to start over. What were you really counting? Simeon asked, though he suspected he already knew. Years, Ezra admitted, with a short, humorless laugh. 50 of them, on this hillside, and I found myself doing the same foolish thing you probably do sometimes. Simeon, up on that wall of yours, wondering how many more counts I have left in me, wondering if this flock will be the last one I tend, or the one after, or the one after that, wondering what becomes of a shepherd's years. Once they're spent, he shook his head slowly. It's a strange thing, getting old. You'd think a man who has spent his whole life watching over things learns to stop worrying about being watched over himself. But it doesn't work that way. If anything, the older I get, the more I find myself wondering who's counting my days. The way I've counted the days of every lamb ever born to this flock. Simeon nodded slowly, understanding this ache better than perhaps any other man in the village could have, given how close in years he and Ezra had walked, each keeping his own kind of watch. I think about that too, he admitted, more than I used to. There's an old prayer I return to on nights like this, a prayer asking to be taught to number our days rightly, so that we might live with wisdom, instead of simply letting the years slip past uncounted. I used to think that prayer was about fear, about trying to hold on tightly to time before it runs out. But the older I get, Ezra, the more I think it's the opposite. I think it's a prayer about release, about learning to hold our years loosely enough that we can actually live inside them, instead of spending every one of them anxious about how many remain. Ezra looked at him, firelight flickering across the deep lines of his face. That's easier to say than to live. My friend, it is. Simeon agreed readily. I don't pretend otherwise. I still find myself doing exactly what you did tonight. Counting twice, as though counting could somehow slow the passing of what it counts. But here's what steadies me when I catch myself doing it. However many years I have left, however many I've already spent, none of them have ever once been outside the watching of the one who numbered them before I was even born. The same God who knew every sparrow that would ever fall, who counted the very hairs on my head before I had a single gray one among them. That same God has been counting my days all along, far more faithfully and far more carefully than I ever could myself. I don't have to hold that counting. I only have to trust the one who's been doing it since before I existed. Ezra was quiet for a long while, watching the fire, watching his sleeping flock scattered peacefully across the dark hillside around him. Animals who trusted him completely, who never once lay awake at night wondering how many more days their shepherd had left to tend them, who simply rested, generation after generation, in the plain fact of his faithful presence. I suppose, he said slowly, I've spent 50 years being the kind of watcher these sheep never have to worry about. Maybe it's time I let myself rest the same way they do. Not because I know how many years remain, but because I trust the one who does. That sounds like wisdom to me, Simeon said, smiling faintly in the firelight. The kind that takes 50 years of shepherding to arrive at, and not a day less. They sat together a while longer, two old men by a small fire on a dark hillside, saying little else, simply keeping each other company in the particular silence that settles between old friends who no longer need many words to understand one another. The flock slept on undisturbed around them, and somewhere overhead, the same slow wheel of stars that had watched over Ezra's fire for 50 years continued its ancient, patient circuit, indifferent to neither of their years, but faithful in its own quiet way to both. Eventually, Simeon rose to return to his own watch, his staff finding the path back down the hillside as easily as it had found the path up. Feed that fire before you nod off entirely, he called back over his shoulder, and Ezra's low, tired laugh followed him partway down the slope, easier now than the silence that had greeted him on his arrival. But if tonight you found yourself counting something you can't quite name, years, or chances, or time running shorter than you'd like, let yourself set the counting down. You were never meant to carry that number alone. The one who numbered your days before you had a single one behind you is still counting, still watching, still faithful, and you are allowed to simply rest inside the years you've been given rather than anxiously guarding how many remain. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near. God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 8, the innkeeper's late return. As Simeon made his way back down from Ezra's hillside, he passed near the small inn that stood just outside the village gate, a low stone building with a wide covered porch, run for as long as anyone could remember by a weary, good-hearted man named Malachi, who had a gift for hospitality and, like most people with such gifts, a habit of giving away more of himself than he ever seemed to keep for his own rest. Simeon found him sitting alone on the porch steps. A lantern burned nearly to nothing beside him, his head in his hands in a posture Simeon had seen too many times that night already not to recognize immediately. "You're up late even for an innkeeper," Simeon said, settling onto the step beside him. Malachi looked up, and even in the dim light, Simeon could see the particular strain of a man carrying guilt rather than simple tiredness. "I turned 2 travelers away tonight," Malachi said quietly. "A family with young children. Every room was full, had been full since before sundown. A caravan came through and took everything I had. I told them there was nothing I could do, and they walked back out into the dark toward the next village. Another 2 hours down the road, tired children and all. And I've been sitting here ever since, wondering if I should have made room somehow. Given up my own bed, cleared space in the storeroom. Anything. Did you have anything to give them? Simeon asked gently. No, Malachi admitted. Truly nothing. Every corner was spoken for. He shook his head. Frustration and guilt tangled together in his voice. But I keep thinking there must have been something more I could have done. I keep replaying it, over and over, wondering what kind of man turns away a family with tired children into the dark. Simeon was quiet for a moment, watching the low lantern flame flicker beside them. The kind of man who had genuinely nothing left to give. He said finally, Malachi, I've known you 20 years, and in that time, I've watched you give away more of yourself to strangers passing through this village than almost anyone else I know. You give your rooms, your food, your evenings, your rest. Tonight you simply ran out. Not because you didn't care enough, but because there is only so much of anything a person has to give. Even a person as generous as you. That doesn't make it easier to sit with. Malachi said. No, Simeon agreed. It rarely does. But can I tell you something I've come to believe? After a great many nights like this one on my own wall, you are not the only shelter those travelers will find tonight. You weren't the last hope standing between them and the dark. There's another village 2 hours down the road, and other doors that might open for them. And beyond even that, there's a watching that doesn't depend entirely on any single innkeeper's available rooms. I think there's a kind of pride hiding inside guilt like yours. If you'll forgive me for saying so, the quiet belief that if you had only done more, or given more, or found some clever way around your own limits, the whole outcome would have rested in your hands alone. But it never does. Malachi, not for me on my wall, and not for you at your door. We do what we can with what we actually have. And then we release the rest into hands far more capable than ours of carrying it the remaining distance. Malachi let out a long, unsteady breath, something in his shoulders loosening slightly at the words, though the guilt didn't vanish entirely. Guilt like that, Simeon knew, rarely leaves all at once. I keep thinking of the old psalm, Malachi said after a while, the one about wishing for wings like a dove, to fly away and be at rest, far from all the trouble. I've thought of it more than once tonight. Sitting here, I know that one well. Simeon said, I've prayed it myself, more nights than I'd like to admit. The longing to simply escape the weight of what we can't fix. But I've noticed something about that psalm over the years. Malachi, it doesn't end with the wings. It doesn't end with escape. It ends with casting your burden on the Lord and trusting that He will sustain you, not fly you away from the hard things, but hold you steady inside them. I think that's closer to what you need tonight than an escape from the guilt. Not to fly away from what happened, but to set the weight of it down where it was always meant to rest. Instead of carrying it alone on this porch step until sunrise. Malachi nodded slowly, looking down at his own hands, calloused from 20 years of carrying travelers' bags and stoking cooking fires and doing exactly as Simeon said, everything within his actual capacity to give. I don't know how to just set it down, he admitted. You don't have to know how all at once, Simeon said. You just start by naming it out loud, the way you just did with me, and by letting someone else carry the weight of it alongside you for a little while. The way I'm doing right now. That's most of what setting a burden down actually looks like. In my experience, not some grand spiritual breakthrough, just someone else showing up, and you letting them. They sat together a while longer as the lantern burned down further, the guilt in Malachi's shoulders easing. Gradually, from something sharp and gripping into something softer, still present, but no longer strangling. Before Simeon rose to leave, Malachi managed a small, tired smile. Thank you for stopping, he said. I think I could have sat here till dawn otherwise, still turning it over. Get some sleep, Simeon said, rising slowly, his own tiredness catching up with him now as the night wore on. The family will find shelter somewhere tonight, one way or another, and you'll have another door to open tomorrow for whoever comes next. That's the whole of the work. Malachi, not carrying every traveler who ever passes through, but faithfully opening the door you actually have, as often as you're able, and trusting the rest to hands larger than your own. But if tonight you're carrying guilt over something you couldn't fix, or a limit you couldn't stretch any further no matter how much you wanted to, let yourself hear this. You are not required to be the last shelter standing for every need that crosses your path. You give what you actually have, faithfully, and then you release what remains into hands far more capable than yours of carrying it the rest of the way. That release isn't failure, it's rest. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 9, the mother and the newborn. The last stop of Simeon's extended 5th watch was the smallest house in the village, tucked into a corner near the eastern wall, where a young mother named Naomi had, only 2 weeks earlier, given birth to her first child, a small, fierce-lunged daughter who had apparently decided, in the 2 weeks since her arrival, that sleep was an activity best avoided at almost every hour of the night. Simeon heard the babies crying long before he reached the house. A thin, insistent wail carried on the still night air, rising and falling, with the particular relentlessness that only a newborn's cry can carry. Beneath it, softer, he could hear Naomi's voice, worn thin with exhaustion, murmuring the same soft nonsense words new mothers murmur the world over, walking slow circles around whatever small room she was in, the way exhausted parents have paced with crying infants since the beginning of time. He knocked softly, and the door opened almost immediately. Naomi hadn't been anywhere near sleep, and the knock, rather than startling her, seemed almost to bring a flicker of relief to her exhausted face. The relief of any interruption at all to a night that had apparently offered none. "Simeon," she said, swaying gently with the baby against her shoulder, the infant's cries beginning, slightly, to ease at the change in motion and voice. "I'm sorry. Is she keeping the whole street awake? Only the ones who are meant to hear her?" Simeon said gently, stepping inside. "May I sit a while?" Naomi nodded gratefully, sinking onto a low stool near the small hearth, still swaying, still murmuring, the baby's cries settling into something between crying and fussing. Not fully soothed, but no longer at full volume either. "She won't sleep," Naomi said, her voice cracking with an exhaustion that went beyond the physical, into the particular despair that new mothers sometimes carry in the deep of the night, when every failed attempt at soothing starts to feel like evidence of some deeper inadequacy. "I've tried everything. Feeding her, rocking her, singing to her, walking her outside for the cool air. Nothing works for more than a few minutes before she's crying again. I don't know what I'm doing wrong." Simeon lowered himself carefully onto the floor beside the small bed, his old knees protesting the movement, though he made no complaint of it. He looked at the child for a long moment, her small chest rising and falling too quickly, her cheeks flushed, her lips moving faintly as though caught in some restless half-dream. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the child, and when Naomi nodded, too exhausted to question it, he reached out and rested his weathered hand very lightly on the child's forehead, the way he had once done for his own children, decades ago, in a house that had long since fallen quiet with grown children of their own now. "She's warm," he said softly, "but not as warm as fear makes it feel. Fever frightens us more than it usually needs to, especially in the deep of the night, when everything feels larger and more dangerous than it will in daylight." "That's what the physician said too," Reuben admitted, settling onto the floor on the other side of the bed. "But it's hard to believe when you're the one watching her struggle to breathe evenly." "I know," Simeon said. I buried a child of my own many years ago to a fever that didn't break the way this one likely will. He said it plainly, without drama, the way old grief is sometimes spoken of by those who have carried it long enough to hold it without flinching. So I don't say this lightly, and I don't say it to make light of your fear. But I've also held 2 other children of mine through fevers just like this one. Fevers that felt every bit as frightening in the deep of the night. And watched them wake the next morning as though nothing had happened at all. Running through the yard by midday like the whole ordeal had been nothing more than a bad dream. Fever in the night feels like the end of the world. Fever in the morning light very often turns out to have simply been fever. Naomi's eyes filled with tears, though something in her posture had softened slightly, the rigid worry easing just a fraction. I keep thinking of the old song, she said quietly, the one about walking through the valley of the shadow. I keep thinking that's where we are right now. In that valley, in the deepest, darkest part of it. And I don't know if we're walking through it or if we're going to be stuck in it forever. You're walking through it, Simeon said, with the quiet certainty of a man who had walked through such valleys himself. More than once. That's what the song promises. Not that the valley won't come, because it always comes, sooner or later, to every house and every heart, but that you don't walk through it alone, and that it is a valley to walk through, not a place to stay forever. There's a rod and a staff in that old song too. The shepherd's tools, meant to guide and to comfort, not just to defend. I think that's what tonight is. A rod and a staff. In whatever small way, an old watchman and a worried mother and father can offer each other in the deep of the night. Comfort as much as protection, presence as much as solutions. He kept his hand resting lightly on Miriam's forehead, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, her restless murmuring began to quiet, her small body settling more deeply into the thin mattress beneath her. Her breathing, though still quick, growing marginally less labored. It might have been nothing more than the natural ebb of the fever, the same rhythm it had followed for days. Or it might have been the simple, undeniable comfort of not being alone in the room with her fear any longer. Simeon didn't try to decide which it was. He simply stayed. "Tell me about your child," Naomi said quietly, after a long while, glancing at him with the particular gentleness people reserve for grief they recognize in someone else. "The one you lost." Simeon smiled, faintly, the smile of old sorrow long since folded into something softer than pain alone. "Her name was Rivka," he said. "She had her mother's stubbornness and my mother's laugh. And she used to follow me partway along my rounds when she was small, until she got too tired and I'd carry her home on my shoulders. I still think of her most nights, somewhere around the 5th watch, which was always her favorite time to wake and demand a story. He looked down at Miriam, whose breathing had steadied further, her small face relaxing out of its earlier, fevered restlessness into something closer to real sleep. I don't tell you this to frighten you further. I tell you because I know what the deepest fear feels like. And I also know that most nights, Lee, are not that night. Most fevers break. Most children run through the yard again by midday. And even on the rare nights when they don't, even in the valley's darkest turn, there is still a shepherd walking it with you, rod and staff in hand, refusing to leave you to walk it alone. Naomi reached over and took her husband's hand, and the two of them sat together beside their daughter's bed as the fifth watch wore on, Simeon staying with them a while longer, until Miriam's fever, at last, seemed to break in earnest, her small body relaxing into a deep, easy sleep, her breathing slow, and even for the first time in days, her forehead, when Lee touched it again with trembling fingers, noticeably cooler than before. "Thank you," Reuben said, his voice thick with relief and exhaustion in equal measure, as Simeon finally rose to continue his rounds. "For staying, for telling us about Rivka." "Rest now," Simeon said gently. "Both of you. The worst of the night has passed. I think, for her and for you. Let yourselves sleep." He let himself out into the cool pre-dawn air, glancing back once at the small house, now quiet, now peaceful, before continuing along his rounds. He thought, as he walked, of Rivka, of the particular ache that never entirely leaves a parent who has lost a child, but also of the particular gift it had become, over the years, to be able to sit beside other frightened parents in the deep of the night and offer them something he wished. More than anything, someone had been able to offer him all those years ago. Not a guarantee that nothing bad would ever happen, but the steady, unshakable presence of someone who understood and who stayed. But if tonight you're walking through your own valley, a fear for someone you love, a worry that feels too large for the darkness to hold, a grief old or new that the quiet hours always seem to bring closer to the surface, you are not walking through it alone. However dark this particular turn in the valley feels, it is a valley to walk through, not a place you'll be left to stay forever. And even here, especially here, there is a shepherd walking beside you, rod and staff in hand, refusing to let go. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 10, the elder who couldn't stop working. On his way back toward the wall, Simeon passed the small workshop belonging to Barak, one of the village elders, a woodworker by trade who had, decades ago, built half the doors and shutters in Kedar's rest with his own 2 hands. A thin line of lamplight still showed beneath the workshop door. Far later than any reasonable hour for a man of Barak's years to still be bent over his bench. Simeon pushed the door open gently and found exactly what he expected. Barak hunched over a half-finished chest, chisel in hand. Sawdust scattered across the floor around him. His movements slower than they used to be, but no less determined, as though sheer will alone could make up for what his aging hands had lost in speed. "Barak," Simeon said, leaning in the doorway. "It's the 5th watch. Even the roosters aren't stirring yet." Barak didn't look up right away, his chisel continuing its careful, practiced path along the wood grain. "Can't sleep," he said. "Haven't been able to most nights lately. Figured I might as well be useful instead of lying awake staring at the ceiling." Simeon stepped inside, lowering himself onto an overturned crate near the bench, watching his old friend work in the lamplight. "What keeps you from sleeping?" Barak set the chisel down at last, rubbing his eyes with the back of one calloused hand. "The council spoke today about who will take over the workshop's contracts once I'm gone. They mean well, but hearing them talk about the workshop continuing on without me, other hands doing the work my hands have done for 40 years, it unsettled something in me I didn't expect." He gestured at the half-finished chest in front of him. "So I came out here instead of lying in bed thinking about it. Told myself I'd just finish this one last piece properly. Prove there's still good work left in these hands yet. How many one last pieces have there been this month?" Simeon asked, not unkindly. Barak let out a short, tired laugh. "God, more than I'd like to admit." Simeon nodded slowly, understanding this restlessness in a way that went deeper than mere tiredness. "I think," he said carefully, "that some of us mistake our worth for our usefulness. We spend so many years being the one who's needed, the one who builds the chest, the one who walks the wall, the one whose hands are always busy solving something, that when the day comes where our hands slow down, or someone else's hands are asked to take up the work instead, it starts to feel less like a passing of duty and more like a kind of disappearing. As though if we're not producing something, we've stopped mattering at all." Barak was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the half-finished chest, its careful joints and smoothed edges, a testament to decades of exactly the kind of skill he feared losing meaning. "That's it exactly," he admitted. "I don't know who I am if I'm not the man people come to for good. Honest work. I've wondered the same thing about my wall." Simeon said, "What happens to me once my legs won't carry me up those steps anymore, and some younger watchman takes my place? Will I have mattered once I'm no longer the one standing watch? It's taken me a long time to arrive at an answer I actually believe. So I'll offer it to you the same way it was offered to me a long time ago by an old watchman near the end of his own years. He leaned forward slightly. Our worth was never actually in the work. Barak, not really. It felt that way. Because the work was how we spent our days. How we served the people we loved. How we built something lasting with the years we were given. But the work was always just the outward shape of something deeper. Faithfulness, given form through wood and chisel, or through footsteps along a wall. The faithfulness is what mattered. And faithfulness doesn't end when the hands slow down. It simply looks for a new shape to take. What shape does it take? Once the workshop passes to someone else. Barak asked quietly. I don't fully know yet. Simeon admitted, with the honesty of a man who has genuinely wrestled with the same question in his own life. Perhaps it looks like teaching the next hands what your hands learned over 40 years. Perhaps it looks like simply being present in this village a while longer. The way you've been present tonight for that half-finished chest, even without needing to finish it. Perhaps it looks like resting, finally, and trusting that the God who gave you these skilled hands in the first place doesn't need them to keep working every single night in order to still delight in you exactly as you are. I don't think our worth was ever something we built with our hands. Barak, I think it was given to us long before either of us picked up a single tool. And it will remain fully intact long after we've set our tools down for good. Barak looked down at his own weathered hands, turning them slowly in the lamplight, tracing the calluses built up over 4 decades of careful work. I don't know how to just rest, he said finally. I've never learned how. Then let tonight be a small beginning. Simeon said gently, not resting from all work forever, just resting from this one chest. Tonight, unfinished, and trusting it will still be here tomorrow, waiting for hands that aren't quite so tired to finish it properly. That's not failure, old friend. That's simply what wisdom looks like, arriving a little later than we'd like, the way it usually does. Barak was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he set the chisel down fully, brushing the sawdust from his hands, looking at the unfinished chest with something less like anxious urgency and more like patient acceptance. Tomorrow. Then, he said, tomorrow. Simeon agreed, rising to help him bank the workshop's small fire and extinguish the lamp. Your hands have done good work for 40 years. Barak, that work doesn't stop being good just because it pauses for a night's rest. Go home. Sleep. The chest will still be beautiful in the morning, half finished or not. But if tonight you've been lying awake wondering what your life means, once you can no longer do all the things that have defined it, hear this gently. Your worth was never actually built by your hands. However skilled, however faithful, it was given to you long before you ever did a single useful thing. And it remains fully intact even on the nights your hands finally, rightly, need to rest. When the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 11, the gatekeeper's daughter. The last encounter of Simeon's long night came almost by accident, as he made his final approach back toward the wall. Sitting on the low steps near the main gate, wrapped in a shawl against the last of the night's chill, was a girl of perhaps 16, Talitha, the gatekeeper's daughter, who should, by every reasonable account, have been asleep hours ago in her bed above her father's small quarters near the gatehouse. Talitha, Simeon said, surprised, coming to stand near the steps. Does your father know you're out here? She shook her head, not looking up right away, her knees drawn up to her chest, her arms wrapped around them in the particular posture of someone trying to hold themselves together. He's asleep, she said quietly. I couldn't sleep, so I came out here to look at the stars instead. It felt better than lying in bed thinking. Simeon lowered himself onto the step beside her, slower than he had all night, the accumulated tiredness of 5 long watches finally settling fully into his old bones. Though something in him, some last reserve, honed by 40 years of practice, remained alert to the girl beside him, and to whatever it was that had kept her from sleep. Thinking about what? He asked gently. Talitha was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the stars overhead, still scattered thick across the sky, though the faintest hint of the coming dawn had begun, almost imperceptibly, to soften the eastern horizon. Everything, she said finally, with the particular weight teenagers carry when the whole of their still unwritten life suddenly feels impossibly large and uncertain all at once. What I'm supposed to do with my life, whether I'll marry well or at all, whether I'll ever leave this village, or if I even want to, whether God actually has some kind of plan for me, or whether I'm just supposed to figure it all out myself and hope I don't get it wrong. She let out a short, frustrated breath. It all just feels like so much to carry, and I'm not even sure where to start carrying it. Simeon nodded slowly, remembering, with a clarity that surprised even him, the particular ache of being 16 and facing a future that felt both entirely open and terrifyingly uncertain all at once. I remember that feeling, he said. Every path unmarked, every choice feeling like it might be the one that ruins everything if you choose wrong. How did you figure it out? Talitha asked, glancing at him for the first time. You've had this whole long life already. You must know how it's supposed to go by now. Simeon laughed softly, not unkindly, at the particular faith young people place in the wisdom of their elders. I didn't figure it out all at once. Talitha, I still don't have it entirely figured out. If I'm honest with you, I became a watchman almost by accident. My father needed help on the wall one winter when the regular watchman fell ill, and I simply never stopped. I didn't plan 40 years of walking this same stretch of stone. It became my life a season at a time, a year at a time, far more than it was ever some grand plan I designed for myself at your age. So there wasn't a plan? Talitha asked. Something in her voice caught between disappointment and relief. There was a plan, Simeon said carefully. Just not the kind you're imagining. Not a map laid out in advance with every turn already marked. More like a shepherd walking just ahead of him. Close enough that I could always see the next few steps clearly, even when I couldn't see the whole road. I've come to believe that's mostly how it works for all of us. We're not meant to see the entire path stretched out before we take a single step. We're only meant to take the next step faithfully, trusting that the one walking ahead of us can see the whole road even when we can't. Talitha considered this, her arms loosening slightly from around her knees. That sounds terrifying. Honestly, she admitted, not knowing. It can be. Simeon agreed. I won't pretend otherwise. But there's something freeing in it too. Once you sit with it a while, you don't actually have to carry the weight of your entire future tonight. Talitha, you only have to carry today, and trust that tomorrow's step will become clear enough when it's actually time to take it. Most of the anxious nights I've spent in my long life were spent worrying about roads I never actually ended up walking. Choices that turned out differently than I feared. Futures that never arrived in the shape I dreaded. The road tends to become clear enough, one step at a time, far more often than our anxious imaginations give it credit for. They sat together for a while longer as the eastern sky continued its slow, quiet transformation, the deep black beginning to give way, by degrees, to the faintest gray. Do you think God actually has a plan for me? Talitha asked quietly, after a long silence, not just in some vague way. Specifically, for me, I do, Simeon said, without hesitation. I don't know what shape it takes. That's not mine to know. And honestly, Talitha, it's not entirely yours to know yet either. Not this far in advance. But I believe, the way I believe the sun is about to rise, even though I can't yet fully see it, that you are watched over with the same careful attention as every sparrow, every lily in the field, every star scattered across that sky above us. You don't have to have your whole future planned out tonight to trust that. You only have to take tomorrow's step when it comes, and trust that the same faithful watching that has carried you this far will carry you the rest of the way too. Talitha let out a long, slow breath, something in her posture finally, fully relaxing, her shoulders coming down from where they'd been tensed for who knew how long. "I think I can sleep now," she said, a small, tired smile touching her face for the first time. "Go on, then," Simeon said gently, helping her to her feet as he rose himself, his old joints protesting the movement after such a long night. "Your father would worry himself sick if he woke and found you gone. And Talitha, whatever tomorrow holds, whatever choice or path or uncertain future you're facing, it doesn't all have to be solved before the sun comes up. That's not how any of this works. Not for you, and not for an old watchman who still, after 40 years, hasn't entirely figured it all out either." She smiled again, more genuinely this time, and made her way back toward the gatehouse and her waiting bed, leaving Simeon alone once more at the base of the steps, watching the sky continue its slow, faithful transformation toward morning. But if tonight your own mind has been circling an uncertain future, a choice you haven't made, a path you can't yet see, a whole unwritten life that feels too large to carry all at once, set it down for tonight. You are not required to see the entire road before you're allowed to rest. You only have to trust that the one walking ahead of you can see what you cannot, and that tomorrow's step will become clear enough exactly when you need it to. But when the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone. Movement 12. The baker's quiet hour. By the time Simeon made his final approach toward the village center, the sky had shifted enough that he no longer needed to guess at the coming dawn. He could see it now, a thin pale line along the eastern hills, gray brightening slowly toward something that would, within the hour, become gold. The baker, a broad, quiet man named Ephraim, was already at his ovens, as he was every morning at this hour, long before anyone else in the village stirred, coaxing the coals back to life for the first loaves of the day. Simeon paused at the open doorway of the bakehouse, drawn by the familiar warmth and the smell of the fire catching. And Ephraim looked up from his work with a small nod of greeting. Unsurprised, the two of them crossed paths most mornings at exactly this hour, the watchman finishing his rounds just as the baker began his. "Long night?" Ephraim asked, not looking up from the dough he was shaping, his broad hands moving with the unhurried confidence of decades of practice. "Longer than most," Simeon admitted, settling onto the low bench just inside the door, grateful for the warmth of the ovens after so many hours in the cool night air. "How's your night been?" Ephraim was quiet for a moment, his hands continuing their steady work. "Peaceful," he said finally. "I like this hour best. If I'm honest, before anyone else is awake, before the day starts asking things of me, just the fire, and the dough, and the quiet." He glanced up, a small, knowing smile touching his tired face. "I imagine that's something like what your whole night looks like, though yours is a good deal longer than mine." Simeon smiled back, feeling, for the first time in hours, the particular ease of two men who understood each other's work without needing much explanation. "It has its quiet stretches," he said, "and its harder ones. Tonight had more of the harder kind than usual. If I'm honest, a good many people needing more than just a quiet watch. That's the strange gift of this hour, isn't it?" Ephraim said, sliding the first tray of shaped loaves toward the oven's mouth. "Everyone else asleep, and the two of us still awake, doing the quiet work that makes the rest of their day possible. They wake up to bread on the table and a village that wasn't overrun in the night. And most of them never think twice about how either of those things came to be true. They just are true, because someone was awake making sure of it." Simeon considered this, watching the flames catch and settle inside the oven, the warm orange light flickering across the stone walls of the small bakehouse. "I think that's most of what faithfulness looks like. In the end," he said slowly, "not grand or dramatic, just quiet, repeated work, done faithfully at an hour when almost no one is watching to notice it or thank you for it. You've been baking bread at this hour for how many years now?" 23, Ephraim said, without needing to think about it. 23 years of loaves nobody thinks to thank you for by name. Simeon said, "And 40 years of a wall nobody thinks to thank me for walking. And yet here we both are, still doing it, morning after morning. Not because anyone demands it of us anymore, but because we've come to believe, somewhere along the way, that the work itself is worth doing faithfully, whether or not it's ever noticed." Ephraim nodded, sliding the tray fully into the oven now, straightening with the small groan of a man who had been on his feet for longer than his back entirely appreciated. "I think that's close to what all of us are meant to be doing, in whatever quiet corner we've been given," he said. "Baking bread, or walking walls, or rocking crying children back to sleep, or simply staying kind to the people we meet along the way. Whether or not any of it ever gets noticed by anyone beyond the one who actually sees all of it clearly." Simeon smiled at that, thinking of everyone he'd met across the long night now finally. Mercifully, drawing to its close, the traveler, Hannah, the two young fishermen, Judah, Reuben and Lee and little Miriam, Ezra on his distant hillside, Malachi on his porch step, Naomi and her newborn daughter, Barak in his workshop, Talitha on the gatehouse steps. None of them had needed grand solutions. All of them had simply needed someone quietly, faithfully present, the way Ephraim had been quietly, faithfully present at these ovens for 23 years, and the way Simeon himself had been quietly, faithfully present on that wall for 40. Sit a while longer, Ephraim said, gesturing toward the warmth of the ovens. First loaves will be out before long, and you look like a man who's earned the first warm bread of the morning more than most. Simeon accepted gladly, settling more comfortably onto the bench, feeling, for the first time in many hours, the particular relief of a long watch drawing honestly and finally to its close. Outside, the sky continued its slow brightening, gray giving way, gradually, to the first faint hints of gold along the horizon, the whole village still sleeping soundly behind him. Safe, rested, and entirely unaware of just how much quiet faithfulness had been required across the long hours of the night to make that safety and that rest possible. He thought, sitting there in the bakehouses gathering warmth, of how strange and how good it was that the world worked this way, that so much of what makes a peaceful morning possible happens in hours no one else ever sees, tended by hands no one else ever thinks to thank, faithful simply because faithfulness, in the end, doesn't require an audience to be worth offering. But if your life feels, tonight, like quiet, unnoticed work, showing up faithfully for people or tasks that rarely think to thank you, tending something steady in the hours when no one else is watching, know that it matters more than you may ever be told directly. The one who sees every quiet hour, every unnoticed loaf, every faithful watch walked in the dark, has never once missed a single moment of it. You are seen, even now, even here, even in the hour before anyone else wakes to notice. When the night feels heavy, remember this: God is near, God is steady, and you do not have to carry tonight alone.